absolutely love Reddit mysteries, and it seems like you guys like them too, considering some of my most popular videos focus on them. So here's another one, and today we'll discuss 4 different mysteries, from strange users to mysterious posts. If you enjoy mysteries, true crime, disappearances and conspiracies, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. I also have a Patreon, so if you're interested in supporting the channel and accessing some bonus content, feel free to check it out, a link will be in the description. Around a month ago, user NoDragonFruit3741 made a post on their Am I the A-hole subreddit titled AITA for taking my husband's property and comparing my husband's strange hobby to infidelity. The post read, "My husband and I have had a rocky marriage and are going through a divorce. I have long suspected him of infidelity because he travels constantly, leaves at weird hours when home, and even had 3 different women file police reports against him a few years ago. Charges got dropped and I eventually believed he was a victim of a witch hunt and moved on. We tried to be civil for the holidays for our respective children. We each have 2 children from previous marriages but none with each other. My daughter was with her boyfriend on Christmas but came home for New Year's Eve. My husband was still at work while we were getting ready. I needed some red wine to make some sangria and asked my daughter to get it out of my husband's room in the cellar where he stores our alcohol. She came back 10 minutes later and looked really worried. I asked her what was wrong and she handed me a small pouch. She said that she jostled the liquor storage cabinet and it fell to the ground. Apparently it was tucked between the liquor storage cabinet and the wall. She opened it up and showed me what was inside. It contained 8 women's driver's licenses. I noticed that they were all from states that my husband had travelled recently for work in the 2 years before the pandemic. He is a medical device salesman. I was worried that he had been a serial adulterer and got these women to give him their driver's licenses as trophies. I brought it to my lawyer's office today and gave it to her secretary, who said she would pass it along on Monday. I was hoping this could be a smoking gun of proof of infidelity for our divorce proceedings. I confronted my husband about it this afternoon. He said that he had a confession. He said that he had a fetish for driver's licenses and would buy them from random women when he went on trips. He admitted it was bizarre, but said that there was something erotic about holding something that left someone else feeling so vulnerable. I said that I was upset and that this was very creepy. I said it was also like cheating on me to get off to some weird fetish like this without sharing it with me first. He got very upset. He admitted that he should have been more open about something that he was struggling with, but that it was completely out of line for me to accuse him of cheating based on this. He also said that he would burn the driver's licenses in the furnace later that night. When I told him that I had given them to my lawyer already, he completely lost it. He said that I had no right to steal his personal property and couldn't even be around me. He packed some clothes and got into his car and took off. Based on what he said and packed, I get the feeling he won't be coming back. I'm not sorry he left since I can't stand him these days. However, I partly feel like he had a point that I shouldn't have compared his weird fetish to cheating or given his property away to my lawyer when it might be evidence of such. As soon as I read that post, I had a sinking feeling that this woman's husband might be guilty of much worse than infidelity, and I wasn't the only one. Many people worried that the husband might have been a serial killer and that these driver's licenses were trophies, as OP suggested, but of people that he'd murdered as opposed to people that he'd cheated with. Even if we were to believe the husband, it's still a little worrying that he likes, in his own words, holding something that left someone else feeling so vulnerable. But that's the absolute best case scenario here, and it just doesn't really make sense. One user said they looked it up and it's actually not unheard of, but I'm guessing it's pretty rare, and if this explanation was true, I still have so many questions. If he purchased them directly from these women, how much did he pay? Obviously you'd have to pay to replace your license, but it also has personal details on it that most people wouldn't just want to give out. Maybe he stole them or bought them from someone else who stole them, I'm not really sure, but either way the bottom line is there's no legal way to buy someone else's driver's license. And there are a couple of details that make the husband's explanation seem unlikely. It's suspicious that 3 different women filed reports against him, and it's kind of baffling how OP let that slide. Though I can imagine being in that situation that you would probably try every way you possibly could to convince yourself that your husband was a good person and that you were safe. How he reacted when confronted is also a pretty big red flag. If they were getting divorced anyway, why would any of this even matter? Why would he even feel the need to explain this to his soon-to-be ex-wife? And if his explanation was true, why would he offer to burn the licenses? It obviously wasn't to appease OP and try and fix things, or he wouldn't have packed his bags and left. If he had something much bigger to hide, it makes sense he'd confess to something smaller, but still odd, to make it seem more believable, then destroy the evidence. OP stated that her husband travels constantly and leaves at weird hours, which, given the context, also looks pretty suspicious. As with each mystery here, and more or less any Reddit mystery, there is a chance that this is all just a made-up story. One user commented, "This is almost exactly the plot of A Good Marriage by Stephen King. A couple are married for decades and everything seems fine until the wife goes into the husband's garage and finds a bunch of ID cards from random women. Turns out he's a serial killer. Difference is this guy has made a break for it, while in the book he promises to stop but the wife kills him." This is definitely an interesting comparison, and maybe OP just made the story up after being inspired by the book. I kinda hope that is the case, as the alternative is a lot worse, but it's certainly not unheard of for serial killers to keep souvenirs. If OP's post was much more detailed and featured very specific details that were the same as the plot in the Stephen King book, that would seem a lot more obvious. I've never read that book, but the comment is pretty vague. It doesn't go into the details of the story, and the post itself doesn't give many specific details either, so it's impossible to say whether OP just created a post based on the book. OP hasn't updated the post since, and this was the only post on her account. This could just mean that this is a fabricated attempt at an internet mystery, but if it is true, I hope that means that she is safe, that she went to the police about this, and that they're investigating him, and that's why she just can't say anything more. User Idahi135 recently contacted me on Reddit to tell me about a strange account by the name of Gladly Awake, who in the space of 5 days made a series of very worrying posts. Their first post, on the 21st of January 2021, was a creepy photo captioned, "I woke up to hear knocking on my door," repeated a few times. The user goes on to comment this on a few seemingly unrelated posts, from a discussion on r/Epic Games PC to an Ask Reddit thread titled, "What book series did you love as a kid?" The first comment I found that wasn't this phrase repeated was on an Ask Reddit post titled, "What does POG mean to you?" I assume the user had initially spammed this phrase, those comments had been removed by a moderator, and someone responded with, "You do need help." To which Gladly Awake replies, "No help." After another weird post on their own profile with, "I woke up to hear knocking on my window," repeated, they changed it up a bit and made a post with, "I don't have much time left," repeated. There was one comment on this post, "If it started today, you have 3 days left." That sounds very ominous, almost as if this user knows what is happening to Gladly Awake and knows what will happen to them. There were a few more repetitive posts with slightly different phrases such as "he's here," "he's inside," and "bye." The user also states in a post and in a comment that they are going to the bridge. Then we finally get some backstory, though it's very brief. "It has been following me for 3 months and I have had enough. He killed my family and was trying to kill me. I had enough and went to the bridge to end this. Goodbye." After this post, there is one that states, "It's chasing me," and another showing a photo of a rundown building captioned, "The House." This building is actually known as Villa de Vecchie and is a mansion in Italy that is thought to be haunted. The final post by Gladly Awake says, "Ending it all," with a photo of a gun. At the time of writing the notes for this video, that post was 5 days ago and they haven't been heard from since. The most obvious theory here would be that Gladly Awake is a troll or is just trying to create an internet mystery. The account was created the day before they started posting about this, so obviously there's no post history, which can sometimes be a bit of a red flag. That doesn't necessarily mean this isn't real in some way, it could just mean that the user just created the account with the sole intention of documenting what was happening to them and asking for help. But it doesn't really seem like that. The posts and the comments just really look like someone who's trying to create an internet mystery. There is a possibility that this person might have suffered some kind of mental breakdown and that could explain the posts, in which case I really hope they managed to get the help that they needed and didn't actually end it all like the last post suggested. There are a couple of things that make this look more like a troll than anything genuine though. For example, the photo they posted of a house is clearly not a photo they took. If you reverse image search, this exact image has been posted on Pinterest and various other sites, which is a little suspicious. I suppose Gladly Awake didn't actually claim the photo was their own, but it did seem to be implied. I couldn't find the photo of the gun anywhere else though, which might suggest that this user took that photo themselves. Someone on Reddit posted a screenshot of their conversation with this user, and again, this seems way more like someone who's trying to create a mystery than someone who's actually going through a psychotic episode. Admittedly, I don't have a huge amount of experience with people in this kind of mental state, so if anyone watching this does and disagrees with me, feel free to correct me in the comments. But the messages seem just cryptic enough to make someone interested without giving any actual information which could potentially add to the validity of what's going on here. I mentioned before that a user by the name of Destiny Slayer 2000 commented on one of Gladly Awake's posts with, "If it started today, you have 3 days left," which seemed to imply that this person might have known more than we do. This comment is kind of baffling to me because it seems that Destiny Slayer really doesn't know what's going on, considering they commented on a post on r/teenagers stating, quote, "I'm trying to help someone with the username of Gladly Awake. They seem to be having schizophrenia or some type of episode as I've messaged them and they said they don't need any help. They are saying to make someone go away or the noises stop." So it seems that they're just as confused as the rest of us regarding what's going on. So why make that ominous comment? They could have just been messing or trolling themselves, but considering it seemed that they really were trying to help Gladly Awake, why would they do that? Maybe Destiny is Gladly Awake. Now, I don't have any evidence to prove that, it's just a hunch, but it is interesting how at sometimes Destiny seems to promote the mystery from the perspective of someone who doesn't know what's going on and just wants to help, and at other times, such as with the comment telling Gladly Awake that they had 3 days left, kinda adds to the story of the mystery. It's possible that this could be some kind of ARG, but it does seem unlikely considering that in the last post, Gladly Awake implied that they ended their own life. All of this only went on for a few days, so unless Gladly Awake decides to post again, it would seem pretty unlikely that this would be an ARG, as it seems like it was over as soon as it began. Either way, I'm pretty confident and hopeful that this is all just some kind of hoax and that Gladly Awake didn't actually harm themselves. But really, it's impossible to say. I'm sure there have been examples where people have posted on Reddit some crazy sounding stuff like this that people have just passed off as a joke or an ARG or something, and it's actually turned out to be real. It's just impossible to say. This next mystery is now solved, kind of, but it's still a fascinating story and has a very sad and not entirely conclusive ending. I came across this on r/advice before it was solved, and honestly, in my opinion, it was probably one of the most intriguing posts I've ever seen on Reddit. So I already planned to include it in my next Reddit Mysteries video, but as I say, it has now been mostly solved, so most of the mystery's gone, but not entirely. But it's still interesting and a pretty sad story. With updates, the post is really long, so I'm not going to read it all, but I'll be showing the whole thing on screen while summarising, so feel free to pause at points if you want to read it all. So to cut a long story short, OP is a 17-year-old living with their grandparents in a small town in Florida. A family lives down the road, Mary and her 2 daughters, Alex and Sandy Beckett. OP hasn't seen the family in a couple of days, so visited, and spent some time with Mary, but didn't see Alex or Sandy. Mary said that Alex was in her room, but when asked where Sandy was, she just looked confused, maybe worried, and said that she only had 1 daughter. OP asked their neighbours about Sandy, but they were also confused. Some comments suggested that Alex and Sandy were the same person, considering both names could be shortened from Alexandra, and that OP had simply gotten confused. Others wondered if Sandy and Alex were cousins or friends rather than sisters. It was even suggested that OP could have had schizophrenia or something. OP updated the post, clearing some of the questions up. They didn't have a history of mental illness and weren't experiencing any other signs of a breakdown or hallucinating. They'd seen Sandy and Alex in the same room together. They were sure they weren't the same person. OP was sure the girls were sisters and not cousins or friends. They'd seen Sandy age over the years, remembering when she got a haircut too. Alex is around 6 or 7 and Sandy was around 4 years old. In another update, OP told how they'd been back to the house that day and told Mary that they were going to the toilet while they looked for Sandy's bedroom. They saw Sandy's room and tried to open the door, but it was locked. Family photos that OP remembers featuring Sandy had been replaced, some with photos of Alex and one replaced with a painting of a cat that looked like it had been done by Alex. So far it's a pretty crazy story, but it was the next update that really got me questioning if it was real. The update was, "Someone's outside, I've never seen them before, they're just standing in the middle of the road, I'm freaking out. Nobody new comes down here, especially not at 11 at night. I can't go out, I don't want them to see me. I haven't seen anybody new down here since that new old guy moved in down the road. Why is someone here? I don't know this person, they're new, I'm freaking out, I can't confront them. I'm going to the bedroom and barricading myself in. This isn't the thing that's taking me out. No, ma'am. Oh God, I'll update when I get a chance and I know it's safe. At this point, I really started wondering if this was some kind of ARG. Before this, there was always a doubt in my mind that this story was made up, but it was pretty compelling. The update after this furthered my belief that this was not real. Almost every word in this update is spelt wrong, but here's what it appears to say. People are confused about my last update. Called Mary and she said it was an old friend who was loitering because she was looking for the right address. Sorry, no picture of person, I panicked. If she comes back, I'll try and remember to get a picture. Can't update more, I'm so tired. Again, very ARG-like. In the next update, OP apologised for their sudden disappearance and states that they don't remember writing the last update and they're not sure what happened in the past few days because they ended up getting sick. It's possible they were sick, but I thought it seemed more likely they might have been under the influence of something when they posted that. In another update, OP said that they checked social media for any record of Sandy and found that Mary hadn't posted much recently and there's a photo of Alex from a few weeks ago but no mention of Sandy. And then there was another update, but this time it was more of a confession. Update/confession. People found a blog. I don't know what else I expected from Reddit, but they found it and I need to come clean. Not in the way you think, but I have been somewhat lying. OP does not exist. There was no neighbour, no grandparents, nothing. The reason things seem sketchy is because I tried to do something sketchy. I've seen those compilation videos of mysteries solved by the internet and similar titles. I thought if I tried to go about this like it was a current thing, maybe I could finally get some damn closure. I'm not a 17-year-old concerned neighbour. My name is Alex Beckett. In 2014, my younger sister Sandy Beckett went missing. I lived in Bronson, Florida. I tried to contact the police, but they didn't care about what some random kid had to say, especially considering I had been driven by my older cousin. He's been arrested at least 3 times, once for hunting on private property, some charge about being a public nuisance or something, and for something related to possession, even though I know for a fact that he couldn't have had any. So the police weren't exactly inclined to care about me telling them Sandy went missing when I showed up in a beaten up Ford truck with the local conspiracy nut. They basically told me the equivalent of, go home honey and leave the mysteries for your little games. My mother wouldn't be much help either. She's not exactly what society, or any sober person for that matter, would call a good mother. Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if she killed Sandy and panicked and somehow got it to stay quiet. I think what worked against me back then was my age, my family, and the fact that my mum never wanted us kids to go out much. Not many people really knew us, despite being pretty tight-knit. So as for why I did this, I just wanted some answers. I thought maybe the internet could help me, and before anybody asks why I lied about who I am, would you really have believed me if I had some crazy conspiracy that happened when I was so young? I know it would have been chalked up to some false memory. That's not what happened. You don't forget a sister. I've forgotten a lot of things, but damn it, I'm not going to forget Sandy. So I made this more episodic, I guess, trying to get people interested so they'd maybe look into this and help me find answers. Only problem is that this is the internet and nobody takes these kinds of things as real. I've gotten a million comments that this isn't real. Well, bingo, you're half right. I just wanted people to see this and maybe find some of those crazy internet sleuths to finally find Sandy. I don't even know if she's alive, but I hope she is. Please, I know I haven't been truthful and I'm sorry. I just want to find my sister. I did some dumb things, but I need some closure. All in all, I'm sorry for any upset I may cause, and I'm sorry I lied. I hope that some people will still try and help me. I'll give any information I can. For all anyone knows, this confession could be fabricated and this whole story could have been made up. I did have a look online to see if I could find any mention of a Sandy or Sandra Beckett going missing around 2014, but I didn't manage to find anything. But I didn't really dig too deep, so that's not to say this didn't happen. I'd be interested to see if anyone else finds anything. Obviously we know that the story from the neighbour's perspective was made up, but I do feel a little more inclined to believe the eventual confession, because there'd just be no reason to post that confession if all of this was fabricated. In terms of how believable the original story was, it was certainly a bit of a stretch, but I could just about buy it before the update about the person being stood outside. And then the one right after, where Alex was just completely incoherent, was the one that just really pushed it too far for me, and that's when I really thought this has to be fake. Regardless, they probably could have left it at that point, and that would be very typical of how many ARGs or Reddit mysteries get left off. Which does make me wonder that maybe that's why they made the confession, because they knew that at that point it would have just looked like a fake story, so they wanted to make sure that people knew it was real. I guess we'll never know for sure if the confession is true, but assuming it is, what an awful situation. I'm not condoning Alex completely lying about certain parts of it, but you can kind of understand why she did. She just wanted to get the story out there. I can't even imagine how it would feel to lose a sister, but then for it to seem that no one cares and no one's even bothering to look for her. I definitely have my doubts about the confession, but assuming Alex is telling the truth about that, I really hope that one day she gets closure and manages to find out what happened to her sister. This final mystery is debatably the darkest of them all. I'll warn you that it involves claims of assault on children. I won't be going into detail or anything, but I'll be summarising the nature of the post, so if that's something that might upset you, please feel free to turn off here. Around a year ago, a series of posts were made by a user claiming to have suffered abuse at work. Most of these posts tell roughly the same stories. One titled, "Coming Out About Abuse at Work," is probably the best summary. I'm not going to be reading these posts out or summarising in too much detail. You can pause the video at points to read it if you want, but I'm just going to be skimming over what actually happened. Between 1998 and 2005, they had various media and talent jobs at film studios with talent groups and other unspecified companies. In 1998, at the age of just 8 years old, the user's nightmare began. They were asked to make inappropriate noises while being recorded and were paid $50 to do so. While this is extremely inappropriate in itself, it's probably the least harmful thing that has happened to this guy. It gets much darker from here, with the abuse ending when he was 15 years old. The user explains how this has affected him. He has had serious problems with drugs and alcohol, has suffered from PTSD and eating disorders. He has been in prison for possession and intent to distribute. Thankfully, he has been sober for years now, but it sounds like the trauma from all this will never leave him. As you may have noticed, the user refrains from giving any specific names of individuals who he had contact with, and of some of the companies he worked for. He does specifically mention Nickelodeon and Paramount, but uses asterisks or says company P or N to refer to the rest. Some people mention that this would be more believable if he had named names, but it's understandable that he wouldn't want to do this. Without proof or corroboration of some kind, which is extremely hard to obtain in a case like this, if he gave names, those people could just potentially come after him for slander. It sounds like he really just needed to get all this off his chest. I don't really think this was the time or place to imply that this story wasn't believable. I have no idea if he was telling the truth or not, but the detail he went into, I'd hate to think that someone would make that kind of stuff up. He did give the initials of 7 people who were supposedly involved: BC, JK, BP, MW, EC, RB, and AT. One comment suggested that BP is Brian Peck. The user never confirmed this, but in case you didn't know, Brian Peck spent 16 months in prison after admitting 2 counts of abusing a Nickelodeon child actor, and he has worked on kids shows since. It was also suggested that MW is Martin Weiss, a manager of child stars who appeared on Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel, who was arrested and sentenced in 2011 for abusing one of his clients. I'm going to avoid speculating on who the other initials might be referring to. I don't want to get sued. The 2 men I already mentioned have literally been convicted for similar things, and that's public knowledge. Still not saying in this specific situation that those initials are definitely Peck and Weiss, just saying it's possible given their history. So the Reddit user did, in a way, name names, but I imagine he's probably just too scared to give out any further details on any of this. Regardless, as I said before, I don't really think this is the time or place to imply that he might be lying about those claims. But whether he is or not, his claims are still believable. We all know that stuff goes on in that industry. We've just mentioned 2 people who have been convicted of that, but sadly the vast majority who are guilty of such despicable crimes will probably never face justice. As for the Reddit user, he hasn't posted for 6 months. I hope that doesn't mean that anything happened to him or that he relapsed or anything. It seems likely that the account was a throwaway, considering he only ever posted about his experiences as a child actor. So maybe he just said everything he had to say on the topic and left it at that. The best possible scenario would be that he's reported these incidents and that there's currently an investigation ongoing and hence he can't say anything more. But judging by what he said in the post, it doesn't really seem that that's what he wanted to do. It was just like he wanted to get all that off his chest. But regardless, I really hope he's doing okay and hopefully maybe one day even finds the courage to seek justice. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you have any theories on the Reddit mysteries that we've discussed in this video, or do you have any other mysteries that you'd like me to cover in an upcoming video? So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday in a new video.